point about it's an abundance model, I think it's a very, very important point. I mean, remember the abundance model when you go into your next negotiation and you think about the linear thinkers out there that are adding up the numbers to add up to 100%. You know, just bring that abundance model thinking to your next negotiation and see if you can consummate the deal. So thank you, Ailette. Our next speaker, Phillips Moskowitz from eBay, has a very boring title up here, Innovation in Commerce. But I guarantee you what he's going to be talking about is anything but boring. We're living in a world where the network effects are moving the world in a very fast pace. So with that, let me ask Michael to come up to the stage. Michael.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here. It's almost like APAC Policy Conference because it's just a room full of Jews in a totally foreign environment. So I feel, well, the truth of the matter is I love being around Jews, but I feel increasingly less secure when we're all together in one place. I much prefer when we're spread out so we constitute less of a target. But let me just get right into it. So today, I really want to talk about the future of commerce because we've moved from search to discovery to serendipity. I have 10 minutes. So for those of you that are non-native English speakers, bear with me. I'm going to try and go fast, and if you have questions, everyone is more than welcome to email me. So there has been, without a doubt, a sea change in the last 5 years, a complete transformation of this category, of this domain, of this discipline as we've always known it. In fact, we've removed the E from commerce. It's everywhere now. It's multidimensional, digital, physical, mobile, global, and it's increasingly emotional. I think a lot of the hard work that was done by sort of unheralded engineers in the 1980s and 90s made the web, or left it rather, an ugly place, but infinitely reprogrammable. In the early 2000s, it became much more intuitive, much more design savvy, much more approachable, much more human, but it's still not particularly emotional. I think that's one of the great next frontiers that you're likely to see in our domain and in adjacent spaces. So doubtless, we have moved from web to mobile very quickly, from search to discovery, from products to people, from curation, and I'm sure this is a theme you'll see elsewhere, to co-creation. But I think the challenge that we now face collectively is that we have to create physical or digital encounters, experiences, memorable, meaningful experiences that leverage the power of what I call hyperselectivity, because I think we can collectively agree that term curation, even though it's in my title, has been beaten to a pulp and almost entirely robbed of meaning. But doing these things to reveal the unseen and make people feel something new or unfamiliar. So let me just go through a quick tour de force of macro trends. In terms of experience design, we have to deliver a memory. It's not just merchandise. It's not stuff. It's sensations. And so if you think, even though it's being popularly panned in the press right now, this, you know, the Bjork program at PS1 and at MoMA, when you put on an Oculus, I mean, look, this is going to be antiquated in 3 to 4 years, but when you place this on your head and you have an unmitigated, intensely intimate experience with a celebrity, that's going to have profound consequences for how we relate to people moving forward in commerce and in adjacent categories. Aesop rises. I'm sure you've heard this everywhere else. I won't be the first to tell you. Everyone is now a storyteller. You know, we're trying to leverage the power of narrative and of lyricism and of poetry to create a more emotional encounter. Plenty of examples across rock, from Aesop Rocky to even stores like Aesop, where you go and get face cream. Popular series in the States, from This American Life to WTF with Mark Maron and Serial. But in commerce specifically, Trunk NYC is a terrific example, I think. When you are able to, in situ, this is one of the shortcomings of magazines traditionally. Magazines can cultivate an unprecedented type of, they can cultivate desire where none existed hitherto. You want it, but they fail irredeemably to deliver on that desire. Suddenly you can shop every foreseeable context, environment, landscape, and home without having to click out. So the world doesn't become navigable, it becomes shoppable. Similarly with Nasty Gal, cohort commerce or identity, if you're able to speak to somebody in an intimate, familiar, personal way, you have them on the hook for life. You know, begin to see more experiences of that variety. And finally, Mr. Porter and this idea of transactional entertainment. There are some movies, not all, but some, that leave in you a desire to either be closer to that character or to live in that world. And I think this is one site which is beginning to incrementally enter that domain that only Disney knows well, which is using movies in service of selling product. Mindful of time, I want to skip one forward. The cult de moi, that it's the generation of me, not we, as much as we might prefer the latter, and that personalization is paramount, that's true. I think what's more interesting is that people are now beginning to exhibit a preference for secrecy. So we've moved, the idea among, I was an entrepreneur before my company was acquired by eBay. When we were building our brand, that was an era of social shopping. And frankly, social shopping has failed, and yet we all still shop on social. But I think people are electing to do it with a greater degree of self-awareness and a deeper appreciation for the consequences of over-revealing. So on the one hand, our lives are on display. There's no place to hide. You will ultimately be held accountable for everything you say and everything you do. True. But we're now beginning to see evidence of people behaving responsibly with a degree of sort of clandestine engineering. So think of Paddle 8. In the past, if you were an art collector, you would be held accountable for everything that you would sell at market, lest you ever be characterized as an art flipper. Well, today, without consequence, you can sell items on Paddle 8. Similarly with the RealReal. You are going to destroy your relationship with specific boutiques if you're unloading the world's most desirable merchandise on eBay and other sites. Not so when you're hiding behind the relative veil of strategic secrecy with the RealReal. Designing for 360, we said, we're online, we're offline. There has to be complete continuity between these various experiences, encounters, and devices. A great example is Warby. If you happen to like or love that site and don't loathe it, you're going to be able to encounter something eerily reminiscent of that web experience when you go in person. Now, a bad example, and I'm not going to call anybody out specifically, but this is a company that sounds like Bonobos. You can go to that store, and you cannot walk out with anything in hand. Remember that since time immemorial, when as human beings we wanted to buy something, the highest moment of that shopping journey that was intensely emotional and always memorable was walking out bag in hand. And that's the only thing that we can't do in commerce. Conversely, oddly, the lowest moment in a shopping journey through digitally mediated encounters is the moment that you click to purchase. And the only companies long-term that are going to be able to overcome that deficit are those that deliver an experience, and not for Jews, but for Gentiles, a Christmas morning-like encounter. When it's a box inside of a box inside of a box with a personalized note and ribbon and tissue. And Mr. Porter and Net-a-Porter both do that. Conversely, at this store, you can't buy anything. You go in to touch, and like that scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin when you are only allowed to see and you still have to buy on eBay, you can't walk away with anything. That's a terrible example. But an interesting one is that for all of the monstrous power of a Net-a-Porter, we don't know what an in-store experience is going to look like with or for them when either inexorably or inevitably they open one up. If you really want to make big dollars and you want to continue to scale in service of the expectations held by your investors, they're going to have to get into the physical domain, the physical realm that you and I inhabit every single day, and figure out how to program something that matters. That's tough. But that's a massive trend, is that the expectations in the bar is rising uncontrollably for intoxicating physical encounters. And conversely, the experiences online have to serve a very different kind of a purpose. Foreign affairs, 3 minutes. I'm going to skip this one. The idea is third-party influencers, whether they're celebrities or internet celebrities, or people that we increasingly now rely on, like we would the mafia. We pay them dues. And the challenge is that even if that helps you orchestrate or engineer early growth, it's not sustainable over time. And I don't think any of us have the answer for how best in a congested, competitive, noisy environment like the one that all consumers face in the United States, which, to be perfectly frank, is reminiscent of US soldiers marching eastward into Germany in 1945 under constant military barrage. The relative chill and isolation of a foxhole feels comfortable. And I think a lot of American consumers today, in our space, feel under attack. And they're looking for a sense of quiet. They're looking for a degree of personalization, which is a topic we're going to get to in a moment. Looking for a sense of quiet and a retreat. Something that is like having your hand held by an empathic concierge and leading you on a journey. So, the future. We're doubtless going to see a greater degree of personalization. Curation started off by saying, here are the 10 things that matter most to you. What we're going to see in years to come is, here's the one thing you need or desire that you might not have even been aware of in advance. And when I talk about tiramisu tech, here's what I mean. The founder, who's a friend of Flipboard, Mike McHugh, talks about folded layers of the expert human eye with powerful technology. You could call it the double helix approach to technology. We're going to see more of it. Some evidence you're already beginning to see in the web product on Flipboard. In the case of LinkedIn, there's a Jewish writer named A.J. Jacobs who's now having the world's largest family reunion because we're all related, even if it's an 11th cousin twice removed. And in the future, when LinkedIn is able to harvest genetic data, not just generic information, the world is going to serve up anticipatory results based on your own genetic preferences and predispositions and predilections. eBay is someday going to follow suit. Curation at inception. The idea, with 1 minute, I'll move fast. The idea is thinking 5 years out and designing products specifically in anticipation of what humankind might then desire, courtesy of other inputs and influences. And this idea of infinite supply is simple. Look, proverbially speaking, the holy grail has always been a more intuitive, a more humane digital landscape. Someday it'll be the proverbial equivalent to the human genome. But today, what we're all collectively gunning after and fighting tooth and claw to win is how to treat every piece of content ever created. That's every film, every story, every short essay, every video, every article, and every photograph, and making it permanently shoppable. It's not yet possible. We might very well be on the precipice of it, and he or she or whomsoever manages to unlock this box is going to win enormously. I think that's all I have. Thank you.